Our Earth from above. Dominating this perspective, a vast tract of land sweeps across 2 continents and 11 time zones. A confederation of states, which, despite recent defections, remains the largest political entity on Earth. This land is often described as Russia. Yet, as recent events have brought clearly into focus, Russians are but one of more than 100 ethnic groups in this confederation. A kaleidoscope of 290 million people speaking over 80 different languages. They are the human face of the Soviet Union. Ancient Georgia, a mountain republic on the crossroads of the old world. The Caucasus Mountains, spanning the finger of land north of Turkey and between the Black and Caspian Seas. These 6,000-meter peaks dominating the Soviet Union's southwest are the age-old border separating Europe from the Middle East. In the shadow of the Caucasus lies the home of the Guraspishvili family, one of 6 in the Icebreaker series. Nodari Guraspishvili is a Georgian. He lives in the village of Gremy, one of countless small communities in the Caucasus foothills. Nodari's lived here all his life, apart from a study course in his youth, learning his trade in a nearby town. He's Gremy's carpenter. Nodari's workshop is on one side of the village. 5 minutes' walk from his house on the other. He lives here with his wife, Siala, and the 2 youngest of their 4 children. Their cow has spent the day grazing outside the village. It finds its own way home for milking. The cow has only recently calved, and it's a race between Siala and the new calf for the precious milk. 14-year-old Nana shares in the housekeeping. She's still bound by rules which dictate that, for the most part, girls work inside, boys outside. The backyard is fringed by lean-to sheds, the fowl house, the family toilet, a shelter for the cow, and the pig pen. 12-year-old Gia is the family's youngest and the only boy. The pigs are his special job. Gremy village lies in a valley plateau, and the medieval church which overlooks the valley is still a focus of local belief. For more than 1,600 years, the Georgian people have been Christian. The village has a population of about 800, people whose forebears 200 years ago were considered so handsome that their name was borrowed to distinguish all the races of Europe from those beyond the mountain chain. The Caucasians. Gremy, like the rest of Georgia, is wine country. But while the autumn grape harvest overshadows most other village activity, it also signals time to stock up for winter. Nodari doesn't have transport himself, but Tamazi, his neighbour, does. So, together with 12-year-old Gia, they head off to collect this year's allocation of firewood. The village forest lies tucked into the foothills, just a few minutes away. Each year, the village council apportions to each family, according to its need, the amount of timber they may take from the forest. This year, Nodari's family will have exactly 17 trees, all taken from this particular part of the forest, to get them through a winter which can reach as low as minus 20 degrees Celsius. Chopping the trees is men's work. Chopping firewood, women's. This wood's not for warmth, but for cooking, to be fed into the bread oven, kept in a special shed in the backyard. The oven's just as it would have been 1,000 years ago. A cylinder lined with bricks and clad on the outside with planks to protect the baker. It's called a tournai. Young Gear has helped his father collect the firewood for some years now. It's part of his training as a Georgian boy. Siala prepares for the bread bake with a routine learned when she herself was a child. When the wood in the tournai has burned down, she'll rake the embers smooth. By then, the brick lining will hold just enough heat to cook the bread without burning it. In the meantime, she's mixed stone ground wheat with water, salt and a little yeast, the leaven from the last baking. Now she'll knead it and leave it a while to rise. As with most of the food eaten in Gremi, the bread is made from local produce. The wheat is mountain grown and ground in the village mill. Siala's bread will be distinctive. Every household in the village bakes bread the same way, but no two breads will have quite the same taste. There are 4 children in the Guraspishvili family. The 2 oldest daughters are married and live elsewhere in the village. But with the grape harvest due, 20-year-old Manana has come home to help out. The area around and under the house is all workspace. The fowls, the pigs, the bread, the firewood, the washing. Everything has its own special place. Eldest sister Lali tackles the bumper family wash with Nana. The family is close-knit at all times, but never more so than during harvest time. The bread has a family history. When Siala married, her mother gave her a small jar of leavening dough, just as her own mother had done a generation earlier. Now, in each baking, Siala puts a little aside as leaven for the next, and so always makes a bread that's part of the family chain. There are few taps in the village, so having one is a magnet for the rest of the family. At her own home, Lali has to fetch water every time she needs it. Siala wets one side of the loaf to help it stick to the oven wall. And then, with a technique learned from her mother, she leans into the heat of the oven and slaps the loaf into position, careful not to let her hands brush the hot brick cooking surface. The fresh-cut logs are piled in the backyard, where they'll dry out in the open for a few weeks. Before the winter snow, Nodari and Gia will store them under cover. After 10 minutes, the loaves are baked. They're soft and light when they're fresh, but they have a short life. So in a few days' time, there'll be another bake. Bread is the core of the Georgian family diet, and Siala will bake twice a week for the rest of her life. The village council pays Nodari regularly for a particular amount of work, his monthly quota. The quota contract makes him responsible for all Gremi's carpentry needs, mainly the fittings for the village's houses. Even the newest are built as they always have been, of stone, but with timber fittings. Once he has fulfilled his quota, he can take on extra work for himself. He might make a set of chairs at the special request of a villager. But this month, he's still working on his normal quota. As usual, it's a window frame for another stone house. Georgians invest a great deal in the care of their children. In the centre of Gremi, the village runs its own free kindergarten. And this is where Siala works, as cook, preparing lunch for the village's preschoolers. Georgians, partly from Russian influence, regard the midday meal as the main meal of the day and eat more lightly in the evening. The children first come here at about 18 months and stay till they're 7 when they start regular school. All but the smallest villages have their own daycare centres as a matter of necessity. 80% of Soviet women have full-time jobs. There's an imbalance between the sexes here, as there is throughout the Soviet Union, a shortage of men in the older age groups. It's a legacy of the Second World War. But the Soviet influence hasn't been just one way. Yusef Stalin came from this republic. And they're still waving the red flag here. But Georgia today is no compliant state of the wider Union. Under perestroika, it has increasingly asserted its passionate desire for independence. Factions in the cities have fought over this issue and the country's political future. This may be a remote mountain village, but they're still in touch with what's happening in the outside world. For Marnana, her parents' telephone allows regular contact with her husband, whose work often takes him out of the village. This means that 14-year-old Nana often gets the chance to play mother with her nephew Zurab. Most Georgian mountain families are large, often extending through 5 generations, and a number of houses in the village. The Gurespishvili family are no exception. They share each other's homes, amenities, children, and chores. It's rare for women in Gremi to have leisure time. For Nana, there's always a household chore. Standard training for a young Georgian girl, especially here in the mountains, where traditional roles keep women in the home. Not so for boys. For baby Zurab, Gia, and his best friend Rezo, There'll always be time to kick around the village while the women are working. This woman used to work the mill with her husband, but a year ago he died. She runs the mill alone now, and she wears black. Time-honoured local custom demands that if any male in a family dies, the women will wear black for the rest of their lives. The blacksmith harks back to the past as well. Old Ira shifted the village forge to a shed behind his son Georgi's house 20 years ago. These days, Georgi helps fire it up in the morning so that Ira can go on making axe heads the old way. Ira's been blacksmithing for more than 3 generations, though he's not particularly old by local standards. Georgians live longer and stay fit and active longer than anywhere else in the Soviet Union. Indeed, in the world. The axe head is the latest of many that Ira's made for one of his most regular customers, his older brother, Yusef. Yusef's a young 93. Wood carving is a tradition in many Georgian villages, where the products are for the local market. Yusef's work is for everyday use, and he does it with an axe. No subtle whittling here. Yusef's direct technique has been honed over 80 years. Yusef lives in a small cottage on the outskirts of Gremi, where the high valley floor meets the Caucasus mountain forest. Here, he's close to the most important thing in his life, his wood supply. From the high country ridges down to the foothills, the forest is rich with wildlife. Chamois, goat, bear, deer, gazelle, wild boar, and in the air, partridge, quail, pheasant and mountain turkey. The meat from the hunt is men's work, and while he'll keep most of his kill for the family's coming grape harvest celebration, Nudari prepares some for today's lunch. The mountain goat's excellent for one of the best-known dishes in Georgia's cuisine, shashlik. And it's often accompanied by an equally famous Georgian dish, hachapuri, Georgian cheese bread. The cheese curd stuffing is from village goat's milk, and the dough that Lali wraps around it is left over from her mother's morning bread bake. Hachapuri and shashlik are not inventions of Georgian chefs. They are each the common food of the people. The shashlik is cooked out in the yard on a bed of grapevine stalks, which create long burning and very hot embers. The hachapuri is prepared in the family's inside kitchen, Both foods deserve their reputation. They're simple and delicious. On the road just outside Gremi, a small team of shearers from neighbouring Armenia works some of the village flock. It's early autumn and the second shearing of the year. The sheep must be hardy enough to survive the coming snows and temperatures far below zero without their winter coats. The shearers travel from village to village, selling their services to the local councils. But they rarely venture inside the villages. Armenians are treated with some disdain by Georgians. The wool, however, is an important source of income for Gremi. It's not a weaving village itself, but in many of the surrounding villages, weaving is a principal craft. The green circle of Gremi, stamped on the whole flock, completes the shearer's work. But the region's main economy is grapes. Its main activity in autumn, the harvest. Everyone, young and old, gets involved. For Gia's best friend Rezo, the harvest is a time to dress up in traditional costume. He's one of Gremi's best young dancers. Now, with the grape harvest underway, Rezo's off to entertain the workers. At midday, when the grape pickers break for lunch, he'll be at the vineyards with other youngsters. The songs and the dances are not relics of a distant past, brought out only for visitors. The arts of the Georgians are part of their everyday lives. So, when lunchtime brings a chance to be entertained by some of the village children, with traditional songs, dances, or even a casual wrestling display, there's a ready audience. Christianity is at the core of Georgia. Gremy's tiny ancient chapel is a testament to this. Though it's a long time since the village was able to support a priest, the chapel is still a focus for prayer and offering. The nearest priest is 50 kilometers away in the regional centre of Telavi, and it's to here that the people of Gremy come for sanctified worship. Georgians have been Christians for longer, almost, than anyone else. 20 years before Constantine declared the Roman Empire Christian, an Italian slave woman, St. Nina, preached the teachings of Christ here in the Caucasus Mountains. As a result, in 337 AD, Christianity became the official religion of what is now eastern Georgia. The Georgian church has often been dominated by the Russian Orthodox Church, particularly since the 18th century, when Tsarist Russia was invited in to protect the country from its Muslim neighbours. But since the revolution, Georgia has been the most Christian of the republics of the Soviet Union, and the Georgian Orthodox Church again a distinct and autonomous branch of Christianity, a branch which since the 8th century has had its own patriarch, its own cathedrals, and its own way of worship. Uniquely, despite having its own local patriarch, the Georgian Orthodox Church also recognizes both the Patriarch of Istanbul and the Pope of Rome. Georgians, with their own unique Christianity, are strong believers in religious freedom. Among the many active churches, there are also mosques and synagogues. Straddling the Kura River in Georgia's central plateau, just 130 kilometers from Gremy, is the ancient capital city of Tbilisi. When the city was founded in the 5th century, rival warrior chiefs had already ruled this valley since pre-Roman times. But Tbilisi was to emerge as the dominant centre. Its celebrated founder, King Vaktangi, still presides over the city that now stands beneath the ruins of his original fortress. Vaktangi established the city at the site of an ancient spring. The name Tbilisi means warm waters. Of Georgia's 5 million people, 1 million live here. The location's natural advantages made Tbilisi the focal point of the Caucasus, today the capital of the Georgian Republic. A unique blend of architecture is a feature of the city. The buildings reflect not just Georgia's colourful personality, but Georgian history as well. The multitude of styles is the legacy of 2,000 years of invasion by Romans, Arabs, Mongols, and most often by Turks and Persians. Most recently, by the Russians, their stark apartments like sentinels above the city. But fiercely independent Georgia has always retained its own spirit. Good food, good wine, a love of poetry and a love of song. The Georgians are a people with an indomitable love of life. Soda fountains are a popular Georgian speciality. The flavours are the invention of a Tbilisi family, and the recipes are jealously guarded secret. The syrups are mixed with mineral water from the local springs, and the result is so palatable that open-fronted soda stores are now a feature throughout the Republic. The huge Tbilisi hippodrome testifies to another love of the Georgians: horses and horse sports. Competitions and displays run continuously most weekends, encompassing both European and Middle Eastern traditions. Kabahi is an ancient team sport related to modern polo. Teams competing here today have come from Asian republics of the Soviet Union. Other sports are much more familiar. Spectators come for the occasion, not to gamble. That's illegal here, officially. With an individual driver for each horse, Russian troikas are also a regular attraction. It's all highly competitive, and that's true for the troikas as well. The Republic of Georgia, famous for its originality and vitality, is rich too in its arts and crafts. Most of this woman's work is sold by the state to tourists. Although her medium is traditional, her product, like that of many Georgian craftspeople, is innovative. These woven puppeteers support real puppets, threaded out of the textile itself. Of all vocations in the Soviet Union, among the most respected are those in the arts. They're also among the most highly paid, although the difference between a high income and a low one is much less than in the West. The potter's work again is mostly for government commission, and he'll be paid whether the vase is sold or not. In another city studio, the focus is art on a grander scale. Sculpture in the Soviet Union is widely appreciated as one of the most common and popular of the arts. It's encouraged and supported by the state. Levan Mahaidze is one of Georgia's most distinguished sculptors. He and his son Dato share their studio, and they often work together. Levan Mahaidze's work is displayed in major cities throughout the Soviet Union and abroad, but nowhere more than in the cities of his own country. Tbilisi abounds in statues and street corner sculptures that capture the vitality and spirit of Georgia. eve of the Guraspishvili's grape harvest. When Nodari built his house 25 years ago, he buried his wine vats beneath his basement floor, as is the way in Georgia. There are 6 of them, huge earthenware amphoras, each as tall as a man and as wide as his outstretched arms. They will empty 3 in a year. Every season, the other 3 must be cleaned before refilling. It's a time for ritual. The celebration is simple and traditional. Gia's role was played by his father when he was a boy. And the mountain goat horn has been in the family for generations. This modest autumn ritual is to bless the freshly cleaned vats before they're refilled with the new vintage. It's all very simple. The family, with their neighbour Tamazi, break bread and take wine. The wine is the young and fruity vintage from last year's harvest. The bread's freshly baked. The vegetables too are fresh and village grown. Tomorrow, the family will harvest their own vines, with grapes enough to fill all 3 vats Nodari has cleaned. For the last 2 days, Lali's youngest, 18-month-old Youssef, has had an eye infection. It hasn't cleared up spontaneously, so it's time to take him to the village's medical clinic. Serious disorders are treated at the hospital in the regional centre, Tel Aviv, over an hour's drive from the village. But most of the village's day-to-day medical problems are treated by Gremi's resident doctor. The doctor is not paid much more than other people in Gremi, but her status does get her special privileges, like going to the top of waiting lists or qualifying for products in short supply. Most village youngsters are released from school for the few days of their family's grape harvests. For Gia and his friend Rezo, the preparations are over. Now there's time to just hang around the house. In the American state of Georgia, it would be a basketball hoop. But here in the Republic of Georgia, it's a pair of gymnastic hoops, the universal pastime in this part of the world. All her life, Siala has clothed her family herself. Now it's the turn of her grandchildren. Siala measures Manana's son Zurab for a shirt made of cloth from the village store. They have a limited range, just a few bolts, supplied sporadically from Tbilisi. But she needs little else. She chalks her marks directly on the cloth. And from years of practice, without pins or patterns, she cuts it by eye.
No.
And she sews it on the machine that Nodari gave her as a wedding present. It's not unusual for horses to be brought to Nodari for shoeing. As the local carpenter, he has the tools and the skills to do the job. And in this case, he's repaying Tomasi for his help in collecting the firewood earlier. It's Gremmy's barter system in action. And it's important for Tomasi. He needs the horse for the grape harvest tomorrow. But the horse is more to him than just his livelihood. It also gives him his standing in the village. Night is falling on the eve of the family's harvest, and at the edge of Gremy village, an old man prepares for the cold. He's a frost guard, and he'll sleep in the cornstalk hut until the grapes are picked. A late autumn frost would damage the quality of the grapes and the income of the village, so the old men are assigned to watch the vineyards and to raise the alarm if the temperature falls too low. Alerted, the villagers can help light smoke pots to blanket the vines and prevent the frost settling. The family's new calf has been promised to Manana, so it's she who's on hand when the vet finally calls to check it out. He's been expected all day, but his busy round has to take in a number of villages throughout the valley. The calf, now 5 days old, is pronounced fit and healthy. Next morning, the family and their friends gather for the Gurispishvili's grape harvest. The family's vines are in a small allotment at the edge of Gremy, separate from the village's larger collective vineyards. In the Soviet Union, Georgians are notorious for their addiction to private enterprise, especially in agriculture. Elsewhere in the Union, 97% of the grapes produced are sold to the state. Here in Georgia, the figure is only 67%. The rest finds other markets or is consumed at home. These grapes are the Gurispishvili's own. At the end of harvest day, the juice from the grapes is safely in Nadari's basement vats. The rest is in here. Every year, the women heat the residue from the crusher with sugar and flour for a harvest time treat. Walnuts or dried fruits are strung together and dipped into the mixture. The syrup-coated nuts will set to a chewy texture. The strings will be removed after they've hung 2 days, delivering a sweet and nutty homemade Georgian candy bar. Not that everyone waits 2 days. In a few weeks, the snows will come to Georgia and to Gremi village, and this year's harvest celebration will blend into the Gurispishvili's family history. Between now and next year's vintage, Siala will milk the cow twice a day and bake bread twice a week. Soon Manana will have her next baby. A year from now, the Gurispishvili family will produce another 3 vats of wine and have another harvest celebration. Mountain people, they work hard, they relax even harder. Lovers of good times, lovers of tradition. Georgians are lovers of life.